Music is important because it relates to a part of a person that isn't shrouded in a language based, ego based world of ideas inside of their head. It's a raw emotional expression, kind of like when you smell a candle that takes you all the way back to when you were 5 years old. But the difference is music is an expression of sound, and therefore it happens over time. You can take a C major chord and play it out ad infinitum, but that would be the most boring song in the world. The way the music happens is you let go of the C chord and you go into an F chord. You move on into the next, and that develops through the song and resonates in the past and is constantly, you know, updated until the song is over. Active listening, following along with the music in your head, is actually the best way to meditate. And what I mean by this is to relate this, which was my intention, to the psychedelic experience and to what is possible to find within a psychedelic experience, how it applies to non psychedelic states, and how it applies to the nature of reality. And music is the perfect tool to demonstrate this for a couple reasons. Active listening wakes up your mind and allows you to think in ways that aren't stuck in an everyday language based task, risk and reward survival instinct. Music is a language of free expression that hits directly on an emotional level and bypasses the ego. So, what I'm trying to say is that the universe, what most people consider it to be, is actually the language it speaks. You understand what I'm saying? When when a river carves a canyon out of the side of a mountain, because it flows and flows for thousands and thousands of years, this is an expression of the fundamentals that are happening on a higher level. You know what I mean? The universe isn't stuff. The stuff in the universe is literally just an expression of what the universe is, the patterns that lie beneath the surface. And, with a river carving grooves into the side of rock, what you see is the laws of nature and the laws of physics coming to play. You say, oh, with enough kinetic energy, something as docile as water, you know, over enough time. And so relating music to the psychedelic experience is perfect because the way things transform and evolve in both music and the psychedelic experience show you that life is happening right now and that it's for the moment, and that, in order to continue, you have to let go of what you're doing and do something else. Let go of what you did and do more. It is something that I only want to say about it things I know for sure are true and not things I've heard other people say, because I want to be as precise as possible. And it can be described as a lot of things, so it's easy to fall into that trap. But what you can find in a psychedelic experience um, is basically the heart of the universe. It's the essence by which things like love manifest in poetry. You know what I mean? It's the um, inspiration for people who believe in magic, alchemy. It's something that teaches you different things depending on how you think about it. It's kind of like this all encompassing, um, just presence, maybe, or object. But I can't really describe with words how human it actually is. Because when I found this thing, I felt so connected to it. It was like seeing my grandma after 20 years. You know what I mean? It was just immediately set in and clicked that this is what it was, and that it had been here this whole time, and just its magnitude and grandiosity. Um, but it's based on participation and belief. This is not something that we are, as humans, are anywhere near being able to scientifically identify. I mean, it doesn't even have a physical form. It's far away, maybe, but sometimes it seems like it's just right on the other side of the light. So, thinking about it, you know, does about as much as imagining yourself eating a hamburger when you're hungry. Um, but it is something of great importance. And when you hear it in music or poetry, and when you know it's there, whether or not the person who wrote the poem even knows what I'm talking about, they're being inspired by it. You know what I'm saying? It affects all of us. And most people just don't know that it's there. So this was about 12 or 13 years ago. And, I'm a pretty logical, level headed person. I essentially believe that consciousness is the fundamental root of everything, and that quantum physics behaves in a way that mirrors the activities of consciousness. And I think that people have their own experiences that show that the universe is alive. I certainly have had experiences like that. I've heard other people say that they do. And the whole point is that you have to use your mind in ways that are not trapped within a literally language-based paradigm. If all of your thinking inside your head is words, you're never going to see outside of the box. And consciousness is like a tool that can be focused towards, whatever it is that's important. So, for example, if I were to take a magnet and put electrical wire around in a coil and spin, and induce like an electromagnetic field, I would be able to draw from that field. And so if you are to think in your mind of something and position it exactly where it needs to be, refocus yourself on that thing. You know what I'm saying? If consciousness can be proven to be a fundamental field of existence, just like the Higgs field, that permeates through all things and is the central driving force of life, then we will begin to study its properties on a physical level. We'll begin to really look for where the focus and stuff is. Because your picture of reality is not in your head. Your picture of reality is projected out onto the world. If you take your eyeballs and look diagonal down and to the left, what's really happening is one eyeball is following a set of mechanics that points it to that point. Yet you can already see where I'm going because the other eyeball's in a different spot, so it has to correspond to a different set of angles to reach the same focal point. And it kind of readjusts automatically to make it seem like your eyes are just going straight diagonally down in the same direction. And so I believe what's really happening in that situation is that you're anticipating what you're about to focus on. And then the sight, the image of what's to come as you move your eyeballs is literally flowing out of them onto the physical world with quantum processes. And then, your eyeballs subconsciously readjust with saccadic movements. And I think it is much more reasonable to think that the brain is sort of like a quantum computer. And reality is like a quantum internet. And through evolution, brains have gotten complex enough to be able to turn the dials high enough to access the level of consciousness where we are. And so, what's really driving evolution is life's will to evolve and transcend itself and become more complex and multidimensional. We all have a drive to ascend to higher planes, you know. This drive has just been nearly removed from the culture because of American capitalism. When you focus on something, you notice physical differences. You know what I'm saying? And the implication that those differences aren't there is infantile and destructive and denial based nonsense. There is no reason to believe that an observer does not always have an effect on reality. You know what I'm saying? There would not be one without the other. That's the paradigm I operate under. And whatever you're focusing on, even if it's not there physically, still has pseudo physical properties. I mean, even thoughts have feelings, have pseudo physical properties. And so these experiences are certainly happening. But I don't know. I just kind of wanted to use music as a way to describe this because, you know, it really is what's happening now, you know, as it moves along and expresses more patterns, things in reality happen from the quantum scale all the way up to the freaking solar system. And the solar system functions on its mechanics. The galaxy that it contains it functions on its mechanics. And, you know, there are lots of wild things that might be happening due to black holes crossing each other's gravitational paths, inducing spin, compression of gas, and sort of unlocking of different mechanisms. But we can get into that more when we talk about psychedelic experiences, because there are ways that things can unfold within a physical means, like an object, like a ring, and be fluid and have depth, yet not change any physical aspect of that object, which is a very interesting thing to me. So, it's, in other words, like you're looking at a pop up book, right? And it's like, um, all of a sudden, it's Alice in Wonderland. Now all of a sudden it's Wizard of Oz. Now all of a sudden it's The Matrix. But nothing physically changes about the topology of the book or the topography. You're looking at it straight on and you see, you know, the same physical aspects, yet everything about the object has changed. And that's a difficult thing to try to portray. But when you get it right, they know exactly what you're talking about.